Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's symposium. My name is Hannah Hartley, and I'm one of the project teams supporting Without Walls, the largest consortium of outdoor arts festivals in the UK, dedicated to commissioning and touring new outdoor work and supporting the ambition of artists. This virtual symposium is organised in partnership between Without Walls and Wild Rumpus and forms part of the Without Walls Creative Lab programme, a series of creative laboratories designed to allow for in-depth examination of identified sector topics. The outcomes and learning from each laboratory will be documented and shared with all Without Walls partners and the wider sector. We received more than 170 registrations from 10 countries for today's symposium, and it's great to see that so many of you are watching right now. Before we proceed, I just want to run through a few practicalities. Each of our 3 panels today will feature a range of speaker presentations and will be followed by a chair discussion with our presenting speakers. All of today's programme will take place here in Hopin. Presentations will be broadcast on the stage, and the follow-on discussions will take place in sessions, which you can find by following the link on the left-hand menu. Today's programme will run until 5:50 p.m. UK time. This first session will run until 11:45 UK time, which is 2 hours in total, including a 15-minute break between the presentations and follow-on discussion. The schedule includes several screen breaks for your comfort. During these, the live stream will be paused, but the event will remain open for you to continue interacting through the chat function. We're recording all of today's programme, and these recordings will be made available online following the symposium. To interact during the session, you will see 2 chat boxes. Please use the event chat to say hello, who you are and where you're from, so that other participants can see who is present. You're also encouraged to submit questions for the panellists in the stage chat, which I will be monitoring throughout the day. I will aim to pose as many of your questions as we can to our speakers during the follow-on discussions. Feel free to comment, post and tweet about this event using the hashtag #CreativeLab, and make sure to follow Without Walls and Wild Rumpus on social media, as we'll be sharing follow-up content and resources. Finally, for access purposes and for any viewers for whom English is not their first language, we are providing live captioning and BSL throughout the day. To follow the captions, simply visit the link that we have shared in the event chat. I hope you'll enjoy the conversations today and make valuable connections. Without any further ado, I would now like to ask Mark Denby to join me and welcome you warmly to this event. Mark is the Head of Production and Programme for Norfolk and Norwich Festival and a Without Walls board member. So over to you, Mark.
I'm really pleased to welcome you all here for this virtual symposium, which we're co-delivering with network member Wild Rumpus. Without Walls recognises that the climate crisis is an immediate and pressing issue and acknowledges the challenges that artists face in creation and touring process, as well as the limited opportunities available to discuss and reflect on these issues. As the UK's largest consortium of outdoor arts festivals, we have a key role to play in encouraging and supporting action. Many of the 35 Without Walls partner festivals have already undertaken significant steps to reduce their individual carbon footprints. Over the next 3 years, we'll continue to work with our partners, industry experts, and others in the outdoor arts sector to encourage shared action and research in this area, championing environmental good practice. This knowledge and experience will be shared with the wider sector, and resources and findings will be published as they become available. This symposium feels like a timely opportunity to reflect on the special challenges and opportunities around reducing carbon impacts in outdoor contexts, taking place during an enforced period of slowing down and reflection created by the ongoing health crisis. Building on the success of the first Without Walls Creation Lab on digital work in the outdoors, which we delivered at 101 Outdoor Arts last year, this second lab takes a post-COVID format, with this virtual symposium followed by a 3-day socially distanced artist residential taking place on site at Wild Rumpus's woodland space, The Forge in Cheshire, giving participants access to the unique range of facilities, including creation, fabrication, and living facilities. We hope that today's discussions and the ensuing artist residential will support outdoor practitioners to find approaches to embedding environmental sustainability into their practice. Finally, I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the crucial support that we receive from Arts Council England, without whom much of this activity would not be possible, and of course our partners at Wild Rumpus, who have devised a brilliant programme which I'm looking forward to participating in today. I'll now hand over to Rowan Cannon, co-director of Wild Rumpus, to start our first session.
Hello everyone, welcome to the symposium. I have to say we are thrilled and heartened by the number of registrations to attend and the international nature of those registrations. I think it really speaks to how present and immediate this issue feels for us in the outdoor arts. I'm Rowan Cannon. I'm one of the directors of Wild Rumpus, and we are, for those of you who don't know us, a arts organisation based in the north of England who publicly produce large-scale arts events for all audiences, but in predominantly family audiences in wild natural landscapes, and then have alongside that a huge program of artist residencies, talent development, lots of other kind of behind the scenes work, and a big chunk of work about sustainability. When we've been planning this symposium and talking about all the issues, what we've talked about most, and what I think we always talk about most when we come to being open and frank about our struggles with sustainability, is that it's so daunting. As everybody knows, we are standing in the front of a climate crisis, and it is so easy for the fear of that to sometimes become paralyzing. I think there's a desire for certainty in the decisions that we make, whether it be from kind of cable ties at our events to the large scale work that we program. And I think sometimes the nuances of the decisions that we need to make can be paralyzing. And so what my hopes for today is that we can get some comfort from being together, from talking about these issues openly and frankly, that we can't control the climate crisis, but we can control the way that we as an outdoor arts sector tackle it and approach it together. And I hope that we can, coming out of today, coming out of this week's residency, look at some new ways of working together, some new ways of communicating and sharing the work that we're all doing. There's such incredible work happening in this sector, in this area. And I think the more that we can share and talk about it and be honest and frank and non-judgmental about the work that we're doing and other people are doing. Let's talk about our failures. Let's talk about what we're getting wrong, where we have got it right. We've got such an incredible group of people here today. And I think what we're not going to hear is 20 success stories. I think we're going to hear 20 people who are also struggling with all of the stuff that we are around trying to make our work more sustainable. And some of those people are a little bit further down the journey than we are or you might be, and some of them aren't. And I think they're all holding their hands out and reaching out and saying, let's be open and let's change the way a little bit we talk about this so that we're all in it together. And first up, we have got Alison Tickell, who is quite far down her journey of sustainability and has been, as many of the people in the UK art sector know, are such a kind of leading force and has taught and informed and supported so many of us through our sustainability journey. So I would love to hand over to her to tell us a little bit about her work.
Hi, thank you so much for that, and thank you very much for having me this morning. It's a real pleasure, and forgive me if it's a bit clunky on this new system. I've not come across this particular system, so I'm going to share a screen. I gather that you can also see me. So I'm just going to romp through some slides for you. So let's have a look. Sorry. I don't know if you can see those slides. Sorry, I'm really sorry. There we go. Share. Okay, I'm assuming that you can see these slides. So I just thought I'd start out by kind of reframing, redescribing the name of this presentation, because we were asked about the need to develop a different system and a different approach to how we work, which really focuses on collaboration and how we might work together. And I felt that really it feels like it's very obvious that actually we have got these huge areas that we need to tackle, to think about really differently, and really the need to take a different approach to our work is very obvious. So the first thing I think that matters so much, and I think for many of you this will be not new, but I think it's worth restating that this huge, great growth machine that we're all so subject to, which is this particular manifestation of very aggressive capitalism, is based on some very deep ideas that are shared and have become very ubiquitous. One of the interesting things about this moment is that actually some of these ideas are really being re-examined. And the metaphors, so many of the metaphors by which we live, cast nature as this machine. It's quite hostile. It needs to be dominated by us. That's a mark of humanity's success. And culture is very often part of that, the idea of the creative industries, these engines of growth, that culture is the pinnacle of civilized society, and that actually culture is an example of us overcoming nature, taking nature and using nature to reframe ourselves and who we think we are, instead, of course, of the reality that nature is indeed a giving parent. We are prodigiously connected to nature. We are part of nature, and we are subject to nature. Nature is a web of life, and nature is an extraordinary teacher. And culture similarly could be a creative child subject to nature. It is, of course, an ecosystem within itself, and culture is constantly learning from nature. And similarly, very briefly, the frames that we live by, that nature has no intrinsic value. It should be conquered, exploited, engineered, bought and sold. Similarly, culture will drive economic growth. This idea that the creative industries are all about the bottom line, that artistic priorities are supreme above all else, and that culture can buy, own, exploit and sell natural resources. Again, turning that on its head, the idea that everything is connected, that humans are deeply part of nature. Earth is a holistic living organism, and nature is creative beyond our imaginations, and we have much to learn. Similarly, culture is reliant on a thriving world. Culture is tangible and intangible heritage. It's our belief systems, it's our myths, it's our languages which are dependent on the earth, and we have so much to learn. So very briefly about our organisation. My company is called Julie's Bicycle. We've been around for about 13 years. That's our mission statement. We do believe deeply that creativity and culture can and are indeed instrumental and should be powering action on the environment. And we have 3 objectives. The arts and culture are globally our net zero. This is so critical that we tackle the immediate climate crisis, and restorative around nature. What does a cultural community that really is dedicated to, inspired by a regenerative idea of ourselves in relation to this incredible world we have. The second, that the arts and culture can take this incredible moment to inspire action on the climate and ecological crisis, and we're seeing so much of that. And finally, that justice, that the idea that we recognize how we've got here, who have been the winners, who have been the losers, what part, and that includes the natural world, and what part can we play to rebalance through reparation and restoration the idea of a just society. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? That actually, if we work together, we're so much more likely to tackle this crisis. So I just thought I'd quickly put the key. There are so many frameworks that we're working to. On the left at the top is the donut economics idea, by somebody called Kate Raworth in the UK, who's pulled together the social and the environmental constraints and opportunities into this lovely idea of a donut. Where is the safe place to live? The second one down from the left is the 9 planetary boundaries. Those are the key natural systems by which we live, some of which have been very drastically exceeded. Then we've got the idea of a circular economy, which is moving away from a make and waste system into an idea where we lose the concept of waste altogether. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, of course, 17 terrific ideas by which we need to live. The bottom right-hand corner is a reparative justice model where we put right wrongs and harms and how we do that. And this is critical today, at a moment where the carapace of colonialism and white supremacy is really being revealed in a completely new way. There is also, most recently, the European Green Deal, and of course the idea of a net zero carbon future. And in the middle, there is that idea of mutualism, where actually the crocodile and the bird, where we need to work differently. So we've been asking ourselves for a long time. Julie's Bicycle has dedicated itself to really driving action, so creating resources and tools and networks and deep friendship. And we've been asking ourselves, what is a movement? And I think post-COVID, we're really beginning to feel a very different approach to this. We've identified that actually, by looking globally, that there's a huge amount of incredibly exciting and pioneering activity right across the sector. One of the things that we're deeply aware of, as I'm sure you all are, is that culture is a system. It's part of a much bigger system, and a system requires an approach that is quite holistic. It's all-encompassing. It needs to be both proactive and reactive, and move away from working in silos. And we've identified that actually, as I'm sure all of you are very aware, that things are really shifting in culture. And we've just looked at, first of all, a key principle is about pathfinding. There are some terrific individuals and organizations at the nexus between our climate and environment crisis and between culture and what it is to reimagine through deep values and practice the world as it needs to be. So pathfinding is a really important role, and I think probably everybody on this call is in the business of pathfinding your particular way through. There's artwork. The creative and climate crisis has become the muse for our artists and our content creators. Critical that we seek them out, that we support them, and that we join their work. There's activism, more and more people coming out on the streets, more and more movements that are taking place right across the piece, across culture. Artists becoming activists moving into the arts and culture. Justice that needs to sit at the bottom and the top and centre stage, which is rethinking how we see ourselves in the world, how we rethink our values in relation to climate and the environment. There's organisations that are doing extraordinary and interesting work. They're really worth seeking out. Very often, I'm sure many of you are part of them. The unsung part of this cultural ecosystem is what's happening with our institution and our organizational leadership, big and small. People really trying to embody a different way of thinking about the world. Design and innovation. Let's move design so that it really works to help us innovate, both in terms of social and in terms of material design, into a different space. There's policy changing, and I'm really pleased to see how much these big levers of change are beginning to support the grassroots. around rethinking what matters in terms of our culture, and there's some particularly exciting thinking going on within the European Commission at the moment about really reinvigorating cultural policy so that it is no longer broken, it is fit for purpose, and puts at the heart of all our policy and investment, all our framing, all our support, the climate crisis. And of course, all of this is reliant on collaboration. It all requires us to work together. And this is really difficult. I think realistically, this is how do we move? This is a temperature chart of the UK between over the last very short around 1980. It's very rapid shift, but I've turned it round. How do we move from the situation that we're in to the situation that we need to be, which is living on a sustainable world? Fundamentally, we need to reframe how we view ourselves in relation to the natural world and really rethink how we work together, bringing together the values of collaboration and partnership. And I'm under no illusion that this is not easy. I think we need to work together very differently. We need to foster generosity, and we need to remove ourselves from the idea of culture being about penetration, about numbers of tickets sold, and about profit margins. And there's a lot of work going on, as many of you will know, around public purpose and what that means. I'm going to be really interested today to hear some of the ideas that we've got. But I think our organising principles need to be based on a fundamental idea of who we think we are, and to develop a new cultural ecosystem, the organising principles of which are actually about climate and our ecology. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that's me done. Is that?
That was great. Thank you. I think that really spoke to that inherent connectedness that we have of our working culture with the natural world. I'm really interested to talk about that a little bit more in the discussion later. So I'd love to invite Chris Johnson now to stage. Chris is the co-founder of Shambala Festival, as well as being an activist and a consultant. And we I can't tell you how many times we've been at kind of festival networking events, and some member of the Wild Rumpus team has cornered Chris in behind the tea and coffee and pounded him with questions about all sorts of aspects of the detail of sustainability, and his depth of knowledge and understanding is fascinating, and I can't wait to hear from him today. So I'm handing over to Chris. Thank you.
Great. Hello. Well, thank you for having me, and I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this community. It's really exciting for me to be part of a wider creative community. So yeah, I'm a festival organizer, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and what we've achieved as a festival. I realise that not everyone here is a festival organizer, although many of us in the arts do either organize or are involved in events. So I'll keep it quite broad rather than focused on events, and I'm basically going to rump through some of my experiences and some of what we've achieved. And what I hope to offer today is a sense of what's possible. And so I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. There's a few nice slides. Okay. So hopefully what you've got is a title slide. So rather grandiose: purpose, impact and voice. Half of me, when I sat down to flesh out this talk, wished I hadn't chosen such a grandiose title. So I've subtitled it with Ramblings of a Festival Organizer. So basically I've spent 10 years dedicated to finding ways to measurably reducing negative environmental impacts at our festival Shambala, and trying to inspire people to care about climate change and change their behaviour. And of course, it's been a journey with lots of frustration, failure and learning, but also with some notable successes. And these are the headlines from from our 10 years as a festival, we've reduced our emissions footprint by 90%. And we're actually carbon positive by a factor of about 10 through investments in renewable energy and tree planting. We've eliminated single-use plastic. We're very proudly meat and fish free, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We recycle around 80% of recyclable waste, so there's work to do there, and it's been a tough journey, but we're getting there. And we are 100% renewably powered. And because of this, Shambala is known as a pioneering festival, and it's known globally. And at times, this really shocks me. I'm proud of what we've done, and I realise that we've done more than many. There are examples of festivals that have done that are as pioneering as us across Europe. But I marvel at the fact that we have become known globally for what we've done. And I marvel because it really feels like what we have done is fairly straightforward. I mused that kind of you could do a GCSE on sort of festival sustainability, and it would kind of be the level of what we've done. And so only last week, I was contacted by a university in Argentina who have based their syllabus for an event management course, sustainability module, on Shambala. So I've been thinking for this talk, what is it about this journey? And really, it's what we've done is we've done it. You know, we've done it, and we've kept doing it for a long time. We've just been completely determined. We've done our best. You know, none of us were qualified or are qualified in environmental science. No one started as an expert. We don't have big budgets. We just place sustainability at the very core of what we do. In fact, one of the things we say is that it's in our organization's DNA. And we didn't compromise. We constantly reached out for help. We learned as much as we could. We tried things. We took risks. We're still taking risks. And we found out what didn't work, and we kept going. We constantly ask questions. We religiously review what we do. And we listen. And with the help of people like Alison and Julie's Bicycle and other festivals that are trying things and being part of this wider community in our industry, we've really been able to develop the confidence to take some bold steps. So can modelling different ways of doing things and presenting inspiring ideas really influence people beyond the moment? Well, of course it can. I guess my comment on that is that sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't for us. And I'm going to kind of just jump into a few different things that haven't worked to give you a flavour of our experience. So one of the things I hope you're aware of, and that we're very proud of, is that we chose to go meat and fish free at Shambala. And we did this because we felt it was the right thing to do. Obviously, the role of meat and agriculture in the climate debate is significant. And so we felt that by taking meat and fish off the menu, that we could create conversations. And it's creating conversations that we're very much focused on in terms of our relationship with what we do and how we present it. It's always in the sense of a conversation that we feel we can be part of, should be part of, or can spark. So obviously going meat and fish free in the context of 70% of our audience is fairly bold. It captured attention, it divided opinion. That was the point, that's the conversation, of course. And the way we did it was to be very evidence-based, but also very humble in the sense that we don't have the answers, but we feel it's really important to have this conversation. We recognize that we're in a position as an organization, as you are as an artist or as a band or an organization with a public profile. We recognize that we were in a position to bring that conversation. So we brought it with honesty, we brought it with humbleness, and we brought it with boldness. And it was remarkable. It was the first example in the many things that we've done where we've had some concrete feedback. Masses of press attention, but the stats are really interesting on this one because we knew that 70% of our audience were meat and fish eaters. So this wasn't a pushover. We had quite a lot of feedback and it was a controversial decision, but we surveyed our festival audience 6 months immediately after the festival. And 50% of people who identified as meat and fish eaters said they had drastically changed their diet as a result of their experience of the conversations and changes we'd made. 6 months down the line, an amazing 76% of those people who had said they'd drastically changed their diet said they had maintained that change. So for us, of the many initiatives that we've done over the years, it was the first time that we really knew that it was important that we were doing this, and we had some sort of concrete feedback about the inspiration about the changes that people were making as a result of the conversations we were bringing. This slide is about being creative and visual and bold. We always try and have fun. It's a festival, you know, we don't want to be too serious, of course. So we invite artists who will subvert and have a bit of fun. And I think that's really important, that we, you know, it can feel overwhelming and negative, and it's just important to have fun, isn't it, Now, this slide, am I here already? Sorry. Yeah, so I read recently, and probably all of you are very aware that of the idea that 80% of the environmental impact of a product is actually can be attributed to the design phase, i.e., you know, what are we designing? It's fundamentally important. As an artist and curators, I guess this is very much on your mind. And I had the pleasure of a ride on the Grey Elephant, which, for those of you that don't know, is based in Nantes. It's Machine du Nantes, and this wonderful and exquisite creature really captured me, not because of its scale or magnificent, but because of the heart and sense of humanity in the design and the concept. It really struck me. The detail was almost unnecessary. It was sort of generous. I accept that it was probably very well funded, but everything was human scale. Everything about the project had something to offer. It was fundamentally generous, and in its design, it was interactive and participatory. And it really struck me what a role that kind of emotion at the beginning of the design phase can play in what we do. This slide is about the relationship that we've found between kind of hard facts and positive thinking, and I'll talk a bit more about positive thinking. But I love this because it's just so straight to the point. It's true, but it ends with "we can fix it." And of all the slides and ways of representing the sort of crisis that we're in, this one really grabbed me, so I wanted to share it. Another element of what we've done at Shambala, which has felt very important, is providing opportunities for people to participate. Our crowd particularly enjoy this. This is one of the things we've done. It wasn't particularly about climate crisis, but it was about respect, and just providing a moment of togetherness, a moment of community. And it feels even more poignant that we might do this in future after the experience that we've had with COVID and the challenges that have come with that in terms of being together. Essentially, we actually managed to get 20,000 people to sit down and be quiet for a minute and reflect, and it was really profound. Another element that I often reflect on is the way in fundraising, charity fundraising, the donor finishes the story, and I think about that a lot in terms of what we do with Shambala and the climate change conversation and the campaigns and activities that we design. I think about, okay, this is an important conversation, and what's the change that we need to see? But we leave space for our audience to participate, to take that next step, to take the hero step, to finish the story and feel good and have taken some action. Of course, Alison mentioned and talked a little bit about frames. Framing is really important. If we get the framing wrong, then we don't engage people, and we've got things wrong a lot over the years, communicated the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong way, etc. And I found a couple of things which felt quite useful recently. This is from the Frameworks Institute and On the Road Media. And we can follow up with this in terms of a PDF after the conference for anyone who's interested. But I really like the simplicity of these six key frames. Make it doable and show change is possible. Focus on the big things and how we change them. Normalize action and change, not inaction. Connect the planet's health with our own health. Emphasize our shared responsibility for future generations and keep it down to earth. So basic stuff, but really important, I think, to remember. And again, simplicity in the messaging. I've learned the hard way of trying to communicate too much or be too complex. And what I love about XR, amongst other things, is the simplicity of the message. I think our artists can often be too esoteric, and I think it's important to bear in mind simplicity and accessibility. And again, as Alison mentioned, the story, we're human beings. Stories are what move us. I have had some success with the balance of evidence-based, hard-hitting facts, but the story feels really important. And my journey with story has very much been a story called The Children's Fire. 6 or 7 years ago, I met with a man called Tim McCartney, who shared this story. And the story is of a founding moment in a Native American Indian council of elders, when the question was posed, what do we want our society to be, and what principles will we govern it by? And the first principle which they adopted was that no law, no action, no decision that council would take would harm children for 7 generations to come. By children, they mean all living things, not just human babies. And they chose the fire as the symbol of this commitment. It sits at the heart of their everyday life. And it so inspired me, the simplicity of it. But I also recognized that it's a story that I could take into my organization and into the festival and to the wider public. And so it's something we remember at meetings. It's something we bring to team days. And it's something which now forms a narrative around our fundamental commitment to the future. And it's the simplicity of this story that has helped me to communicate that. Couple of thoughts about stories, clear and instinctive for everybody and worth repeating. I think I'm running out of time. Here is something which inspired me, another personal story. It's Daniel Webb of the Everyday Plastic Project. You may have seen it. He collected his plastic for a year and then put it on a billboard, and has just achieved so much success in promoting the idea of reducing plastics that it's really worth a look. Here's an artist that moves me, Rose Vickers. You may have seen it, Relentless Optimism. And I want to finish with a personal reflection on kind of my journey with optimism. Again, it's been said a couple of times already this morning that it can feel difficult, or certainly I have found it difficult to kind of maintain a sense of optimism with the way our politics has been and the way that global inaction in the last couple of years. And so I've really become fond of the idea of relentless optimism, but in a way, even that didn't describe what I needed enough. And I'm going to read quickly a piece. I've discovered the concept of pronoia. It's the antidote of paranoia. And I'm just going to read a little passage that really moved me. Pronoia is fueled by a drive to cultivate happiness and a determination to practice an aggressive form of gratitude that systematically identifies the things that are working well. But it is not a soothing diversion meant for timid Pollyannas strung out on optimistic delusions. It's not a feel-good New Age fantasy used to deny the harsh facts about existence. Those of us who perceive the world pronoically refuse to be polite shills for sentimental hopefulness. On the contrary, we build our optimism not through a repression of difficulty, but rather a vigorous engagement with it. We understand that the best way to attract blessings is to grapple with the knottiest enigmas. Each fresh puzzle is a potential source of future bliss, an exciting teaching that may usher us into the next breakthrough. Blend anarchistic rebelliousness with open-hearted exuberance. Root your insurrectory fervor in expansive joy rather than withering hatred. Enjoy saying no, but don't make it the wellspring of your vitality. Be fueled by blood-red yeses that rip against the grain of comfortable ugliness. And I leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. There were some really beautiful words there. Words like humble and honest and generous and community were just peppered through your talk there. And I think it really speaks to the spirit of what we're trying to approach today and through this week and the work we're doing at the moment in sustainability. And I think as an outdoor art sector, just always coming back to that idea that stories and symbolism is what we're all about. It is our nuts and bolts, our bread and butter. And so I think so well placed are we to I think use those tools that come really naturally to us. That was really lovely. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker, I'm really excited to welcome, I'm only looking at my paper because I'm scared of mispronouncing her name, Yasmin Ostendorf, who is the founder of the Green Art Lab Alliance and also the head of nature research at the Jan van Eyck Academy. And we are delighted to have Yasmin. Welcome.
Hey, hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm super excited to be here with you today. And with such a beautiful lineup of people. I realize I have 14 minutes and I want to do 4 different things. So I'm gonna kind of rush a little bit through my slides, but then stay online a little bit longer. So if people have questions in the chat about which artist it was or some details about the project, I'd be happy to answer them. So just share the screen. Full screen mode. Is that all right for everyone? Great. Oh, let's see. I think like this. So quickly about, because I do a lot of different things, I'm going to start telling you a little bit about GALA, which is a Green Art Lab Alliance, which actually started a couple of years ago, in 2013 to be precise, in which Julie's Bicycle also had a very important role, in which 15 organizations in Europe kind of gathered to, let me see, yeah, gathered to start a knowledge alliance. Everyone was kind of doing their own stuff across Europe, but there was, you know, the knowledge didn't travel so far across different art organizations. So we had some funding from the European Commission for a couple of years and collaborated really with the aim of becoming a kind of mycelium, you know, exchanging knowledge and resources and solidarity. And throughout those years, we up until now, we grew with 30 more partners, of which 15 are in Asia and 15 in Latin America. So there's a couple of, you actually see some of the Asian partners. So I just want, because there's a lot of activities, obviously, that all these 45 organizations are doing. Today, I will just give a couple of case studies of some of these partners from the Netherlands, from Taiwan, from Brazil, and from Austria. I'm going to give you a couple of my personal top tips and share also 2 current open calls that might be relevant for some of you that you can apply for. So some of the resources that might be useful for you, the people watching, is that we are continuously developing guides. So here you see a couple, they're usually called Creative Responses to Sustainability, and they do mappings of different countries, of like who are the artists, who are the main players working with environmental issues, what does the, the cultural policy look like, how are they supported, what are their challenges, what are the specificities of the environmental issues in those countries. And so here you just see a couple that we made for Singapore, Korea, Indonesia, Portugal, various countries. So that's one thing that you can always connect with. And the other thing is that and this is a kind of younger project, but is that we are developing what we call a future materials bank. So this started with a physical inventory of this, actually my office that you're looking at now, a physical inventory of materials that are, non-toxic, biodegradable, sustainable in other ways. Here you see glues and polymers, pigments and dyes, biomaterial, eco-synthetics, textiles and fibers. We're expanding it also with cleaning materials, etc. And because there was actually such an interest from artists to work with other materials, here you see also some mycelium, for instance. We dug a big hole in the garden to test our clay, which actually turned out to be a wonderful clay. So rather than importing our clay from China, we are now going into our own garden, kind of digging our clay for ceramics. But because there was such an interest from artists to start using some of these other alternatives, let's say, even though some of them are really new materials, and some are very traditional and older techniques that are much more common. We've been making a kind of online database too, so an open source, like crowdsources inventory of materials for artists that I would like to also invite everyone to contribute to. Or if you are searching, for an alternative to turpentine or to a wax or whatever, you might find some inspiration there. And obviously that's like something crowdsourced with all these 45 partners. So you might also find materials from Mongolia, India, from the Amazon, different techniques. So yeah, in that sense, it's really like a platform for inspiration on using different materials that are not damaging the environment nor our human health. So I'm going to touch on just a couple of projects. This is also still at the Jan van Eyck Academy. So what you just saw is my office, and then this is kind of the view from there. There is a lab for nature research, there's a food lab, and there's a future materials lab, meaning that they all are kind of working places for artists to start engaging and experimenting and researching topics that fall under this very big umbrella. One of the things that we've been now organizing for a couple of years is a food art film festival that we've been doing both at the Van Eyck, but also in Taiwan with one of our partners, Bamboo Curtain Studio, but also in China with our partner C Platform. And we had been organizing one in Brazil until the pandemic happened. And this is really a way to foster and to forge that kind of local network of artists, farmers, beekeepers, growers to get together, to research food futures, to show inspiring films, to start making things, fermenting things, to really start understanding also the pigments that you can make from food waste, etc. And just like a really fun couple of days together, like Chris was saying. Also the fun part with us is very important. Just very quickly touching on a project that was part of one of our first food art film festivals. This is a work by Christophe Franke, Belgian artist who worked with the local community around Genk to grow cabbages. And from these cabbages, people would learn how to make anthotypes, so photography using these natural pigments. But what you could actually tell from the juice, the elixir, let's say, that you get from the cabbage, is that you learn, or you can understand also the health of the soil. So people were planting all of their own cabbages, learning about the quality of the soil in their own garden, learning how to make these anthotypes that you actually see here with the photography that you can make with it. And after that, we did a kind of toasting to the Anthropocene, where people drink this elixir, but also knowing exactly, in a way, how polluted it is because it's coming from your own back garden, and Genk is actually quite a polluted place because it's very big in the car industries. So just that was quickly one example. This is an example of a project we did this series Paying Ling at one of our partners, Kunsthaus Wien in Austria, which focuses on the Pepino mosaic virus, which is a virus that's commonly found on tomatoes, and which is, as far as we know, not bad for human health, but plays with that notion of people being the vector of a virus, but also the invisibility or the lack of understanding when something is invisible. So trying to make the invisible visible, in this case through tomatoes. Here I'm just touching on some of the projects of Bamboo Curtain Studio in Taiwan, an organization very active within the network, where I also spent a lot of time, and I would recommend everyone also to look them up. A big, very successful project called Plum Tree Creek, also working with the community, cleaning up the river with the children, with the farmers, with all the kind of stakeholders around the creek. And the top image is from Chiang Environmental Wetlands Program, another residency that was founded after the wetlands in Chiang actually got salinated by structural overpumping of the groundwater. So they couldn't use this landscape for rice paddies anymore, and it turned into kind of outdoor biennial where artists get to make work outside. They learn to make all this local crafts, so they work with the local masters on the bamboo, or you collect the shells. The works stay kind of outdoors, big installations. There's a lot of typhoons in Taiwan, so they often also break down again and other people build on it. So it's a kind of ongoing outdoor sculpture park, let's say. This is a work from Markus Jeschaunig, also in Austria, in which he actually used the waste heat of a storage space in Graz and made this bubble that you see up on the building, capturing this waste heat and actually using it to grow banana trees, papaya trees in the middle of the winter, which is crazy. Just the fact, again, in a way, making visible this invisible heat that we are wasting. Can tell you a lot about this project also, but I'm going to just whiz through. Lab Verde in the Amazonian rainforest in Brazil is one of our key partners. I spent quite a bit of time with them too. So they are an annual program bringing artists and scientists in the rainforest, understanding the different landscapes, working with the INPA, the Institute for National Amazonian Research, understanding dendrochronology, like the age of different trees, obviously the indigenous cultures, and kind of raising awareness about what's happening in this very important part of the world that we are all depending on for our oxygen. So all these people that go there, they make kind of work around this. Of course, there's a whole kind of worms that we could also open discussing carbon footprint going to these places. So I am not a fan of quickly going to residencies to do your thing and then going again. And that's also definitely something that is a big topic within our alliance. So with all these 45 partners, we work in working groups to, discuss whatever is very important to discuss, one of them being, of course, sustainable travel. One group is on ecocide, how can these organizations become stewards for nature, making environmental crimes legal crimes. We have working groups on education, on light art education, on art and ecology, but from a Latin American perspective, realizing that actually how a lot of this education is still very Eurocentric, but also working groups on indigenous rights and territories, for instance. So we have about 10 at the moment. Then I was just quickly going to share the 2 open calls because I see the time is ticking. One is from our partner in China, the Xi Art Museum Generative Project. A big problem in China is the kind of brain drain from the countryside. So everyone, a whole new generation, moving to cities, and C Platform is actually trying to also bring artists to the countryside and have them reconnected with nature. Using, again, sustainable materials, but also gathering the local knowledge that is there from the people still living there. So that can be in Chinese medicine, recipes, etc. So that's one open call that if people want to have more information about that, I would be happy to share the PDF. And then also the Jan van Eyck currently still has an open call, which is closing on the 1st of October. So you have, 9-10 more days to write your application. So that includes placements to work in the Lab for Nature Research, the Food Lab, and the Future Materials Lab. So let's see how I am for time. I think all good. Okay, then, like I said, I will be, my 3 last kind of top tips. Think of agency of matter. So all the materiality of all of the things that you use, they tell something. My other top tip would be communicate with food. What we kind of noticed with the Food Art Film Festival and with the Food Lab is you can make massive changes within this kind of infrastructure, where you get your food from, what you do with it. And because people literally internalize it, you're really working with the senses. So this is a very powerful tool of communication, I would say. And my last tip would be this mycelium-like working. So really, not everything needs to always be manifested in a project. Let's say the mushroom is a project, but it can be an underground network where you still continuously redistribute your resources, redistribute knowledge, solidarity, to really be a support structure for each other, which doesn't need to be a monetary thing. And that can also be dormant when there is no need, but that it's there, that there is this solidarity and more than that, friendship. So I would like to finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. That was such a fascinating snapshot of the different projects. I think what I took from it was very much what you were talking about just at the very end there, was about the that link between the micro and the macro, that kind of the real visceral physical element of so many of the projects you talked about, whether it be kind of materials or worms or cabbages, and actually that enables, that kind of real physicality enables us to step back a little bit and keep grounded when we're looking at things from a wider perspective. That was really inspirational. Thank you so much. So everyone, that's the end of our presentations for the first sessions today. if everyone wants to take a bit of a comfort break and then join us back at 11 o'clock for the discussion with the speakers that we've just heard from. There's so many great questions already coming in, so we're really fascinated to hear a little bit more from everybody. Just a quick reminder that the discussion session won't be on the stage area here, so you need to leave the stage, and then at 11 o'clock, if you come back to the sessions area, which you can just see on your menu on the left, there's kind of reception, stage and sessions. Click on sessions, and just about 5 minutes before 11, you'll see the session. You can join us there. Thank you so much, everyone, and can't wait for the next group.